Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Microsoft Reactor session, Product Roundtable with Azure Data Factory. Before we get started, I just want to mention a few quick things. Please feel free to use the chat to ask questions, and we will try to answer as many of those as we can towards the end of the event. To get it started, we would love to hear where everyone is joining us from this evening. I will be sharing some links to our Reactor meetup page and email sign up if you would like to hear about more upcoming Reactor sessions. This session is also being recorded, and I will share a link to our YouTube page in the chat as well. If you have a few moments today, we would also really appreciate you filling out our survey, and I will share the link to that along with the event code as we get closer to the end of this evening. I will now hand it over to Shirley and Wee to get started. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dion. So first of all, we want to thank everyone for joining us for this product roundtable with Azure Data Factory. Now, today we're super excited to bring the engineering team and many of us across the team to answer questions, but at the same time present to you in a set of lightning talks on some of the latest, greatest updates that's been made to Azure Data Factory over the last few months, and we're super excited to hear your feedback about it. Now, before we get started into the specific of the roundtable, we're also inviting feedback by participating in some of these discussions with some of our UX research team. And so if you're interested to join one of us in this kind of session, which is a one-on-one session for our UX researchers on trying to work together in order to shape the future of Azure Data Factory and data integration experience in Azure Synapse Analytics, we'd love to hear from you. And you can see the aka.ms link below. Now, this is essentially the flow of the day. We're going to start off really quickly with a lot of lightning talks, really very focused kind of updates to you so that you can get all this all in a few minutes, right? And then after that, we're going to spend the rest of the time on the product roundtable where we're answering any questions that might be top of your mind. Now, before we get into the specific, the other thing I wanted to share with everyone is really your journey to success with Azure Data Factory. And one of the things that we hear about, both from our customer conversation, talking to the community, right, is really to say, well, if I'm new to Azure Data Factory, how do I get started? But two is, after I get started, if I've gone through all this training, can I get a certification that comes out of it? And so what we've done is we've packed all this together in a set of 7 to 8 Azure Learn modules, and you can see the aka.ms link above as well. And hopefully this is going to help you jumpstart your Azure Data Factory journey. And even if you're an expert in Azure Data Factory, some of these modules deep dive into the specific internals of Azure Data Factory. And so if you're an expert in Azure Data Factory, we hope that you will become an even bigger expert after going through the Learn modules as well. Now, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shirley to share some of the updates.
Hi, everyone, whether you're listening online or listening to a recording video, welcome to the Roundtable. My name's Shirley. I'm a Group Program Manager at ADF, and it's my pleasure today to spend the next 5 minutes to talk to you about just a sampling of the exciting enhancement that we've made to ADF in the last few months. Keep in mind that this is only just a few of the highlights of the recent product enhancements. You'll be able to find much, much more on Azure Updates, on ADF Tech Forum, on our ACOM documentation, and many more. And be sure to be on the lookout for much more exciting product enhancements to come. So without further ado, let's jump right into a few of the updates, recent updates to ADF. The first one is we're really excited to announce ADF integration with Azure Purview. Azure Purview is Azure's latest and greatest metadata catalog and governance product. It's currently in public preview. And the ADF integration allows data engineers to automatically publish lineage and technical metadata into Purview so that you'll be able to effectively understand the lineage of the data production journey, as well as do root cause analysis and impact analysis very, very effectively, not only from single pipeline across multiple pipelines, but also across multiple teams, multiple projects, across factories as well. Next slide, please. We also hear very often from enterprise customers, large and small, that to be able to ensure consistency, compliance, regulations is very much top of mind. It's a key part of enterprise readiness promise. And in order to help customers achieve that, we're happy to announce that we recently released 7 built-in Azure policies from CMK to ensuring that you have turned on your managed virtual network, PLS, to some of the allow lists on which type of link services that you can create, and so on and so forth. So now enterprises can turn on one or more of these policies and ensure that the best practices are being followed throughout the enterprise. A lot of enhancements are being made on the productivity side as well to make sure that ADF is best of breed in terms of providing orchestration and control flow. So one of the recent enhancements is that we're supporting event trigger for storage events as well as custom topics. So now you can not only set up event triggers to built-in blob and ADLS Gen 2 events, but also to be able to define custom events as well. CI/CD is a built-in process for enterprise as they go through the development cycle. So one of the top-of-mind feedback that we've heard is the ability to automatically export and import ARM templates, not only through UI, but also have an automated way of integrating this as part of their CI/CD process. So through this NPM package, you can now be able to do that through a programmatic way. As you know, ADF provides a code-free data transformation experience through data flow. And we also provide ability to integrate Power Query. So now you can edit and be able to author data wrangling and data exploration logic through Power Query Editor and orchestrate that, operationalize that as part of the ADF pipeline on scale-out Spark engines. This is another enhancement in the security and enterprise readiness area. Another common feedback that we hear is the ability to run data integration and ETL flows in a fully secure manner inside a virtual network environment. So currently, this feature for support for managed virtual network is under public preview, whereby through an ADF managed virtual network, you can enable private endpoints that connect securely to external storage and compute services, and to be able to run your entire data flow in a secure manner. And last but not least, we've packaged a lot of the best practices and common patterns in pre-built templates that now available through the template gallery. So not only you can start from scratch, but also you can easily dip into the gallery and find a lot of the commonly used patterns and practices and jumpstart your data integration journey with a click of button. And we're welcome a lot of contribution from the community. We can't wait to see what the community can build as well. And over time, we'll enrich the gallery to offer even more templates. So yeah, that's a quick. Oh, sorry. Last but not least, a reserved instance for data flow. So looks like I'm losing track of the slide sequence here. This is a great mechanism whereby if you have pre-reserved data flow core hours, you can now get up to 30% off if you purchase a 1-year or 3-year reserved plan. So there's a link on the documentation side that explains a lot more on how you can take advantage of the cost reduction.
Yeah, let's hand over to Mark to talk about some of this.
I unmuted. There we go. Hey, thanks, Shirley. Thanks, Hyong. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, this is Mark. I'm a program manager also on the Azure Data Factory team, and I'll just spend a couple of minutes just kind of catching up to speed with what we're doing, specifically inside of Synapse with what you can think of as ADF, but within Synapse, you'll see this surfaced to you as pipelines and data flows. So our goal is to provide that same first class and world class, to be honest with you, enterprise data integration inside of Synapse. What you've enjoyed in ADF, we've brought to Synapse inside of the Synapse workspace. So right from there, you can build your data integration pipelines. You'll see the pretty much the exact same experience that you have today in ADF when you're building those pipelines. And then the other piece that's going to be very prevalent and obvious to you is when you're in the develop section. So you look at the middle of the slide on the screen right now, you see that there's two different sections that are on the Explorer within Synapse. That's integrate and develop. Integrate is where you're going to find the pipelines, and then in develop is where you're going to find the data flows. So in the section of Synapse where you're going to build your SQL scripts, your notebooks, and all the things you're going to do to interact with data, you're also going to have the code-free data flow experience. So think of this as where you're going to go to build that code-free data transformation piece, and you would build that from end to end there inside of Synapse. And then you can add those data flows that you've built into your pipelines from the integrate section of Synapse. So a lot of the things that you've seen that Shirley talked about around the innovations that we're doing in ADF over the next coming months and the rest of this year, you'll see those surface as well inside of Synapse. Some of the release timings of those may be a little bit different because there's some things like the Power Query example that Shirley was giving you as one that we're doing a little bit more work on for the Synapse screens for that. That would take a little bit longer, but these same features will surface there as well. And then we'll also provide some additional ways for you to be able to migrate from one to the other. But Synapse is the is that area where you're going to go to stay within that single sort of analytics solution place. It's going to be a one-stop shop, a single pane of glass to do your development on your database, as well as to get a Spark environment and now do your pipelines and data flows just like you do in ADF today. So that's pretty much it for the Synapse pipelines and data flows. We wanted to keep this short and move on to the other areas we want to talk about today. So I'll hand it back over.
Thanks, Mark. This is Abhishek and Leo. So we'll quickly run you through some security best practices while using Azure Data Factory. And so to start off with, let's talk about some of the key security best practices, and authentication, of course, being one of the most important ones. And let me put a data for all of us for a reference. 74% data breach that happened was due to privileged credential abuse. And this number is staggering because what happens typically in ETL is you share a lot of credentials with different data engineers, and at times, they might have a privileged access, or because you're using some kind of authentication which requires keys or which requires sharing of credentials, and those are the risky bets. And this is a data which comes from Forbes. So just using that number and then coming back to the security best practices in Data Factory, stitching it all together. Managed identities is one of the ways to solve this problem. You can do a fine-grained granular control with managed identities in Data Factories, and it does not involve, you can completely build a password-free data pipelines. You don't have to pass in any credentials or keys as such while building the pipelines. That's one of the key things, takeaways that I would say in terms of best practices using that. And then things that we additionally do is metadata encryption. When you are storing things in Data Factory, like the pipelines, the monitoring data, all of them are encrypted using ADF managed keys. And on top of that, you can bring in CMK, your own key, and then do a double encryption of that, which means your data is absolutely safe and only accessible by you, because without your keys, no one can access that data, even the cloud provider. And then getting into the credential management, as I said, not all services would support managed identities. Managed identities is basically an AD-based authentication mechanism only offered for services like Azure services or Azure data stores, which supports that, AD-based auths. But if you don't have that, don't worry about it. If you're using SQL Server on-prem or Oracle, which does not support AD, you can still store in your credentials in Key Vault and then give a fine-grained granular control to your data engineers using the managed identities of the factory. So you can kind of use a combination of both, put in keys in Key Vault, and then reference it using the managed identities in Data Factory. So you can get the fine-grained controls, at the same time sort that privileged credential abuse problem. And all the data in transit, when you're interacting with Data Factories encrypted using HTTPS TLS 1.2, and then data at rest, we believe that you would use the underlying data stores encryption at rest capabilities while doing that. And so with this, I would like to hand over to Leo for taking us through the network and Azure policy integration enhancements that enterprises would love to use. To Leo.
Okay, thanks, Abhishek. Hello, everyone. My name is Liu Li. I'm also a program manager in Azure Data Factory team. Very glad to have this opportunity to lighten in the security-related topics. Abhishek has already talked something about how to secure your integration solution. I will continue on another two security topics, ADF Vnet and Azure policy integration. Let's start from a very frequent asked topic, ADF Vnet. If you use the ADF, you are familiar with the Azure Integrated Runtime and the self-hosted Integrated Runtime. Azure Integrated Runtime provides a fully managed serverless compute in Azure. You don't need to worry about the such as the infrastructure provision, software installation, patching, or capacity scaling. But all the data transmission goes through the public network, which is not secure enough. And another big disadvantage of Azure Integrated Runtime is that it's very difficult to access on-premises the sources. So we introduce self-hosted Integrated Runtime, which can solve the problem. But the self-hosted Integrated Runtime is lack of some of the advantage of Azure Integrated Runtime, such as the fully managed serverless. And some customers are also worried that they have to manage the self-hosted Integrated Runtime by themselves. And for certain workload, they don't know how many self-hosted integrated nodes they need. So if we can have one kind of integrated runtime that can have all this advantage of both Azure integrated runtime and self-hosted integrated runtime, fully managed service, and can securely access private network, then the customer can leverage in current or future projects. That's the reason why we want to introduce ADF Vnet. When you create a new data factory or a new Azure integrated runtime, you can enable the Vnet, which means the Azure integrated runtime will be provisioned with the managed virtual network and will leverage private endpoint to securely connect to support the stores. The traffic between the stores and the managed virtual network traverses entirely over the Microsoft backbone network. It blocks any potential man-in-the-middle or spoof traffic attack on the public network. Besides the sources, the compute is also isolated by the network. Not only the data at rest, but also the communication channel and the compute are secured. Now, ADF Vnet is in public preview. Besides the existing features in public preview, we will introduce more functionalities and solutions in JScope, such as more data source support and the solution about how to access on-premise data source and how to access Azure SQL instance. Next slide, please. Okay, another topic I want to talk is integration with Azure Policy. Azure Policy is a service in Azure that enables you to create and assign and manage the policy that control audit your resources. This policy enforces different rules and effect over your resource configurations so that those configurations can stay compliant with your corporate standards. Now the ADF is integrated with the Azure policy, and there are several built-in policies that you can assign to your data factory to ensure the resource consistency, compliance, and security. You can also build your own custom policy, which may be more suitable for the requirement of your organization. We plan to open a community to let users create custom policy, and we will regularly select some of them to make into the built-in policies. Next slide. Okay, here are some useful link about the topics we just talked about. If you are interested, you can take a look. Okay, that's all for my part. I think next Sandy will introduce some interesting topics and update on the SS in ADF.
Thanks, Leo. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Sandy Winarko. I'm the lead PM for SSIS in ADF. But before showcasing you our new enterprise-friendly features for SSIS in ADF, I would like to show you how we actually use different features to target different customer cohort. Our main primary customer cohort is what we used to call the brownfield. These are customers who have many existing SSIS packages running on premises. They usually want to simply lift and shift or rehost their packages to run on SSIS integration runtime in ADF with minimal or no change. So we target this customer with features that help them to unblock and accelerate SQL Server migration into an all-pass solution of combining Azure SQL Database or Managed Instance with SSIS in ADF. For example, they can continue using the project or package deployment model, so they can store packages in SSIS catalog or SSIS DB, MSDB, hosted by Azure SQL DB or Managed Instance in Azure Files or File System. And also, we like them to continue using the familiar tools that they have been using on premises, like SQL Server Data Tools or SSDT and SQL Server Management Studio, or most of those familiar command prompt utilities like dtutil and dtxx. We have Azure enabled all those tools and introduced some new features. For example, in SSDT, we have added a new assessment feature where they can assess the cloud compatibility of their packages to run in the cloud. And if they still have data stores on premises, they can join their SSIS IR into a Vnet, or they can use self-hosted IR as a proxy for SSIS IR to access data on premises. And if they continue to use Windows authentication on their on-prem data store, they can use the Windows authentication feature also in the cloud. They can store their access credential securely in Azure Key Vault, or they can even do away of using credential at all by using AAD authentication with AAD Managed Identity. And for orchestration, they can continue using SQL Server Agent hosted by SQL Managed Instance. They can continue using third-party tools, or even use the native orchestrator of ADF pipelines, activities, and triggers. And finally, for enterprises and ISV, they can adapt their custom or license component on SSIS and ADF using our custom setup interfaces and third-party licensing. Next slide, please. Our secondary cohort is what we call the greenfield. These are customers who are already familiar with SSIS and want to actually run new SSIS packages on SSIS IR in ADF, often to complement or to fill the gap in ADF native activities. We use a feature to target them that aren't readily available in ADF and can be easily drag and drop or copied and pasted into ADF pipelines. For example, they can use embedded package within their execute SSIS package activities in ADF pipelines. Literally, they can drag and drop their packages onto the design service or simply cut and paste the XML code of their packages. And they can take advantage of a SSIS execute process or SQL task to trigger any PowerShell, batch, or T-SQL jobs on premises or on Azure VMs. And if they want to connect to a multi-cloud environment, they can actually leverage custom or third-party components using Express custom setups. Next slide, please. So both cohorts will benefit from our new enterprise-friendly features for SSIS and ADF. The first of which is Azure Monitor integration. With this feature, you can now view metrics, query logs, and create alerts for SSIS integration runtime operation or SSIS package execution. As you can see on my screenshot, I have enabled email alerting whenever my package is failing, for example, or whenever my SSIS IR failed to start. And on another screenshot, I show you how you can actually query any kind of logs and create a custom alert on it. Next slide, please. The next feature is the one that we just released literally a couple of weeks ago, and this is actually is what we call a dual standby SSIS IR pair for business continuity and disaster recovery, or BCTR. You can now configure a dual standby SSIS IR pair that works in sync with Azure SQL Database or Managed Instance Failover Group. This allows you to have a pair of running SSIS IR attached to your primary or secondary SSIS DB. So at any given time, one of your IR will always be active, attached to the primary SSIS DB to fetch and execute packages there, while the other is also active, but to run packages that are deployed somewhere else. And when a disaster occurs and a SSIS DB failover happened, the primary and secondary SSIS IR will also swap roles with a near zero downtime. As you can see on my monitoring IR monitoring page there, I have two IR. One is in the East US and the other one is in the West US too. One is a primary and the other one is a secondary. Next slide, please. The next enterprise-friendly features is what we just recently released in preview. We call it the Express Vnet injection. Compared to a standard Vnet injection, our Express Vnet injection will allow you to start your SSIS IR within 5 minutes instead of like within 30 or 40 minutes. And it has no inbound traffic requirement and less outbound traffic requirements. The only limitation is you can for now only use one SSIS IR per Vnet, and it currently does not support global or global Vnet peering. As you can see on the diagram, the difference on the standard Vnet injection, you can see a lot more inbound and outbound arrows coming out from your coming in from your Vnet, while in the new Vnet Express Vnet injection, there's no inbound arrows or traffic requirement, while there's a very few outbound. Okay. Next slide. And finally, we also offer SSIS DevOps tool for continuous integration and continuous delivery, or CI/CD. You can, if you use Azure DevOps, we have SSIS build, deploy, and catalog configuration tasks. And if you don't use Azure DevOps, we also offer a standalone SSIS build or deploy executables. Next slide, please. So finally, to follow up, in case you have any question after this roundtable, you can always contact me. There's my email there, and you can always visit our SSIS product blog to see any new features that we release or any new patterns that can be used to run SSIS in the cloud. And I've also shared a deep dive deck or presentation showing how to do all this thing end to end. So with that, next I will pass this roundtable to Ye, I believe.
Thank you, Sandy. Hello, everyone. This is Ye. I'm also working from Azure Data Factory product team. So I'm gonna use the next few minutes to share with you some best practice of using that Azure Data Factory to do data ingestion. So as we know, the ADF have already known for the data movement capability when you want to ingest data from big variety of sources with a big size of data. So and when people really start to use ADF to ingest your data, from our previous experience working with many people, the most common asks are all around performance, resilience, and flexibility of moving your data. So in the next few minutes, I'm gonna share with you a few tips to tell you how to leverage ADF scalability, resilience, and flexibility to move your data. Okay, next slide. In terms of leverage ADF scalability to move your data, so it's well known that ADF can easily scale up to the amount of processing power to move your data in serverless manner with high performance. So this is something I do not want to highlight. The thing I want to highlight is you can also use ADF to auto-determine the parallel level based on your file pattern instead of manually specify the concrete number of concurrent jobs to move your data. So ADF can automatically detect and scan your file pattern, including the size of file, the number of files, the file structure, and then help you to determine what's the best number of the concurrent job in ADF to move your data so that you can move your data in the most efficient way. And if you are loading a big volume data from some kind of a big table, you can always leverage the built-in parallel copy by partition in ADF to boost your performance. For example, so if your database already have the physical partition, you can just let ADF to detect and use the same partition to move your data in parallel without any additional configuration. So you can see instead of rather than the high scalability in ADF also have a very strong intelligence to detect and help you to adjust the best configuration to move your data in the most efficient way. Okay, next slide. Yeah. In terms of the resilience capability in ADF, you can always resume the copy in ADF from last beginning point instead of starting from the beginning, right? You can configure or get the reusability from ADF either from the auto retry configuration or when you rerun from the fail activity. So yeah, it's a by default in ADF in every place. What's more, you can also enable the fault tolerance configuration in ADF. For example, if you want to skip some inconsistent file or inconsistent row between your source and destination store without interrupt or stop the entire copy process, you can enable that. Then in the middle, ADF can help you skip this kind of invalid file or row, and then moving forward to copy the rest of the data in your destination. And after the copy complete, you can always have a chance to see, hey, what's the file name being skipped or what's the row being skipped, and where is the reason why those are skipped in a we call session log in ADF copy activity. And in order to avoid a human mistake, you can always, using the data consistency verification feature in ADF. The use cases for that feature is, in some cases, when you are moving your data from source to destination, some other guy may not be aware you are moving the same file he's using, right? So he might use writing something into your data. So after that, so you can enable this kind of capability to let ADF do some additional verification on the file when you are moving. So the verification can include MD5, the checksum, row count, file size, this kind of thing. And after the file have already been complete, moving into the destination to make sure the file you are moving from the source is exactly the same as the one in the destination. Okay, next page. The last one is around the flexibility capability in ADF. We know ADF support dynamic variable and parameter, as well as a rich number of control flow activity to help you to ingest your data in your own way. So normally ingest data is not just a simple job, right? You may need some lot of dependency of your ingesting data job, or you may only want to ingest this particular row or particular file based on own business logic. So ADF is easy to help you to get that. So I just list a few examples in this page. For example, you may only want to load some new file when it arrives in your data source. So you have 4 different ways to achieve that. You can enable the built-in copy plus delete capability in your copy activity to really move your data, which is after the data have already been successfully moved to the destination, it can be removed or deleted from the source. So when the next time you want to move the data, the file on the source will always be the new file, right? And you can also use ADF to move data from time-based partition folder with some select time slot, or you want to use ADF to scan the metadata, like the last modified date from each file, and then select the only particular file last modified from a particular time slot to the destination, right? All this kind of capability is available in ADF, and you are encouraged to use that. And if you really have some, the custom logic to identify which file is required to move from source to destination, you can feel free to use your custom logic to write the file name or path into a control file, and then let ADF to consume the control file to move the particular file you want to move. This all supported. And similar thing, if you want to copy specific row from DB, you can easily to compose a dynamic query plus some variable passing from tumbling window or other triggers, so that you can get a dynamic query to load different data in your database from different times. And also, you can easily use ADF to compose a metadata-driven data ingest solution, and all the metadata or this kind of configuration can be stored in any external database. And ADF can easily retrieve that metadata and then use the metadata to dominate your copy behavior for the data movement. Okay, so that is all for my part. So let me hand over to Shirley and Hyong.
Now, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the folks on the team, right, for doing really lightning rounds of the latest and greatest ADF update. And hopefully this is useful to the community. Now, we're going to make the slides available for download after the event. And right now, we're going to transition into the Q&A. And so we're taking questions. And so definitely get the questions coming in. But before we get into the Q&A, I also just wanted to make sure that everyone have access to some of these curated training videos for both Azure Data Factory and Azure SQL that the team has put together over the last month or so. And hopefully this curated list will be a playlist, right, that's going to help you in jump-starting your Azure Data Factory journey. And so with that, let's move into Q&A, and let's bring up the first question. Now, the first question is CI/CD experiences with ADF. Has this been improved, and is it more reliable now? And we're going to bring in one of our experts, Abhishek, to talk about it.
Thanks for the question, Vishang. Yes, so from CI/CD perspective, there has been a lot of improvements. When we started off with a scenario where ADF used something like an ADF publish branch, where we actually put in all the build artifacts. And then you used to click on the publish button to actually generate these build artifacts, which was more of a manual process. So you can say or argue about it that it was not really a continuous integration and it required a manual intervention. Now, what we have done with recent updates is we have changed that flow. So we have created a NPM package, which you can use in your DevOps, the utility package. And this package helps you do an automated build without having to use any publish. Now, this solves a lot of problems. Of course, it automates your build artifact publishing, but it also gives you a lot of freedom on choosing which branch do you want to deploy across environments. So in earlier days, what we used to do is we used to have a collaboration branch, and you could only publish a collaboration branch in the master branch. Typically, it used to be. And then that was the branch which you used to publish it across environments. With the new flow And with the new NPM utility, you have the freedom of doing literally anything, because you can build the artifact from any branch. Even if it's a dev or a feature branch that you're working on, you can basically build that and compile and deploy it using Azure release pipelines and the NPM package, and deploy it into a QA factory and test that alone. So it kind of unlocks a lot of scenarios, combinations that now you can do, the freedom that you can have of CI/CD, and leverage that with ADF. And this is not it. We are constantly investing on it. So we keep hearing on the feedbacks, and happy to hear on any feedbacks that you guys have on CI/CD, and we keep iterating and improving this experience even further. Back to you, Hyong.
Hey, thank you, Abhishek. So let's get the next question onto the chat window. Now, this is from Jack. Hi from New Zealand. I'll be interested in any recommended patterns for custom logging of all activities in an ADF pipeline. So right now, for example, all activities and all activity execution in Azure Data Factory, we will emit logs, but at the same time, we also integrate natively with Azure Monitor. And so you could then be able to use that as a way, right, to understand some of this logging for all the things that happen in Azure Data Factory. Now, let's bring in the next question. Now, as we bring on the next question, do keep all these questions coming in the comment section, and we'd love to hear, any feedback that you have that will help us improve the product, and we're looking forward to work with the community. So we're waiting for the next question to come online. Give it a moment. Now, this question is, how do you determine pipeline activities order to get best performance? So with that, maybe we'll bring in Ye, if you could share some of your thoughts as well.
Thank you, Hyong. So yeah, for this question, it's gonna depend on what kind of stuff you want to do in your ETL or data processing job. If you want to move your data, then the ADF copy activity is the best performance way for you to move your data. If you want to do a data transformation, do a pure ETL, then ADF data flow is the best activity for you to get the best performance to transform your data. So it's totally depends on what you want to do. So basically, when we're talking about the performance, one thing I want to highlight is we always call the performance is a journey instead of immediately get one thing and everything done, right? So because when you are using any kind of activity in ADF, no matter move your data or do ETL, the performance going to be impacted by many different factors, including your environment, the storage, the network, the computer size. All this kind of stuff may hurt your performance as well as your data structure. So given that, so when many customers are asked to, hey, what their performance best practice for us to do in order to get the best performance for us to do ETL data movement job. So the recommendation from us is always, hey, please start from a very small POC based on your environment, your data structure, so that you can understand, okay, what's the best, the pattern for your environment, and what's the best, configuration for you to get the right activity in ADF to get the best performance for you. So, and after that, ADF have a very rich kind of monitoring and performance tuning or performance tape kind of capability for you to help you understand, hey, what's the performance bottleneck? For example, if you are trying to simply move your data from S3 to Blob, and then you have no idea, hey, what's the best configuration I should put in ADF to move the data, and you can simply start from a small POC, and then after you move the data from the monitoring page, you're gonna see the concrete the metrics from your last job, as well as some performance tip. Say the tip going to be something like, hey, from last run, we feel this kind of factor might be your performance bottleneck. You can improve that in order to get better performance, something like this. Yeah, that is the answer. Thanks. Get back to Hyong.
Yeah, thank you, Ye. And I think to add on to what Ye has shared, whether it is you're doing data ingestion and you're looking at tuning the performance of copy, or you're looking at tuning the performance of data flow, we do provide a really complete set of performance tuning guide, right? From, how should you be setting up your integration runtime? How should you be running a baseline kind of load in order to get a sense of the source and destination kind of performance characteristic, etc. And so this two performance tuning guide, we encourage everyone to take a look at it. And we'll also share the link for the performance tuning guide after this session as well. Now let's bring on the next question. Now the next question is from Sandesh. Hi all. When will the Power Query connector within SSIS going to be GA within SQL Server 2019? Now that's a very good question. We're going to bring in the expert on this really soon. And since now that Power Query is available in ADF, is it in preview, what it is, and so on and so forth. So let's bring on the two experts on the team, both SSIS and data flow, to answer the question. So we have Sandy and Mark. Do welcome them to come online.
Thanks, Hyong. On the SSIS side of things, Power Query source that we released in preview are still we are still evaluating customer feedbacks on that, and we are looking to go GA hopefully before the end of this half or early next half of the year. But even though if it's still in preview, let me remind you that you can actually use this in your production, because when you run this, for example, in SSIS in Azure Data Factory, we actually treat every tickets that raise as if you run it in a production. So like even though it's still in preview, you can already get a full production support. Okay, for Power Query on Azure Data Factory data flow, I will let Shirley or Mark to answer this question.
Hey, I'm here. Hey, everybody. Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, so just like Sandy said with Power Query and SSIS, Power Query and ADF is for data wrangling, and that is in public preview. So like Sandy was saying as well, you can use that in production environments. We have quite a few customers that are doing that as well. We are looking to also extend that into Synapse, as I was, when I talked about Synapse in the roadmap there earlier, that's key for us in this calendar year to do that. And in terms of when that will go generally available, we still have the target of making that happen this year. I'd like to see that happen first half of the calendar year. We'll see if we can hit that. That's the current target there for Power Query. Back to you, Hyong.
Now the next question came in from Ed. Would there be a change to Snowflake connector to not require staging to copy to SQL? Example, copy into. And with that, we're going to bring in Shirley, who's going to give us an update on that.
Hey, thanks for the question, Ed. So the reason why we designed Snowflake connector to require staging is really to take advantage of the copy into or copy command, which is the best and most scalable way of ingesting data in and out of Snowflake. So it's fully taking advantage of the MPP and the fully scalable engine behind Snowflake to ensure that the loading, import, and export both directions is as parallelized as possible. So it to really take advantage and get you the best performance possible. So this is very much by design, and contrary to you may think that requiring staging involves a double hop and therefore it's suboptimal. It actually provides even better performance compared to an alternative design. So we don't really have any plans to remove the staging and rather stick with copy into pattern in order to get you the best performance possible.
Now, as we bring in the next question, one of the things that you expect from a product roundtable in a typical in-person conference will be sitting at this round table and we'll be asking the questions. But it turns out that this kind of remote format is really enabling us to connect with communities, right? Not just in the US, but globally as well. So thank you everyone for spending time at the roundtable. And so we're going to bring in the next question, which is from Ed, which is any update on execute SQL activity in ADF, like what we had in SSIS, and currently requires a stop procedure just to run any SQL. So with that, we're going to bring in Abhishek. And as Abhishek is coming online, I agree with you, Ed. You know, like one of the things when I used to be part of the SSIS team, and the top question that gets asked is this amazing execute SQL activity. And Abhishek is actually just the right guy to answer when we're going to make that happen in Azure Data Factory. And not to put you on the spot, Abhishek, all to you.
Yeah, thanks, Hyong. That's a great question, Ed. And we do hear this from other customers as well. And we do understand the importance of having such a simple task to execute SQL scripts. So it is on our roadmap. It should be within end of this calendar year. We are hoping so. No commitments, but this is on our radar, and we want to do this ASAP. And for now, there are a few customers using workarounds with lookups. You can actually use a lookup activity and execute SQL commands as well. Of course, lookup does expect some response back from your execution stuff, but you can play around with that piece of things. So that's the workaround for now. That's not the solution I'm pitching. We will have something like a execute SQL task equivalent activity in ADF as well soon.
Now, as we bring in the next question, thank you, Dion, for the next question. So this is from Nathan. Thank you, Nathan. Is there a plan to notify like email when failure happens instead of doing logic app and via pipeline? And given that Abhishek is still in the call, let's bring Abhishek on this as well. Thank you, Abhishek.
Sure. So Nathan, again, a great question. I know many customers been asking from other different tools. Today's solution remains around using a web activity and logic apps. So you can still use the logic apps mechanism of sharing or sending an email, and then call it from web activity. That's the solution today. It might, like customers do ask for a native activity, but that's something which we explored. We don't have a commitment on that part of things because the logic app integration with ADF works pretty well with the web activity, and you can actually send out emails. The other way of sending out emails is using Azure Monitor. So as you know that Azure Monitor, ADF generates all the metrics in Azure Monitor as well. And so you can actually send out emails on the executions of pipelines or failures on a certain activity. The logs can be sent out as well. It does not contain that levels of details which you might want to customize as using a native activity. But these are the two ways which you can use to send out emails on activity failures today, using a web activity and logic apps. The other one is using Azure Monitor. So back to you, Hyong.
Hey, thank you, Abhishek. Now we're going to bring in the next question up soon. Give it some time. Now the next question is really, can you tell us what does Azure Purview extract from ADF? What kind of insights can we get? And what is the looking forward? What is it going to be like? And so with that, we're going to bring in our expert Shirley, who's going to share with us, her thoughts on the Azure Purview and Azure Data Factory integration, both where we are today and where we're heading towards. Shirley, please.
Thanks, Hyong, and thanks for the question. I'm glad there's so much interest about how ADF integrates with Purview. This is a very, very important area, and we'll continue to make a lot of investments. So let's start with where we are today. As I alluded to in the highlight section at the beginning of the roundtable, Purview is in public preview today, and ADF integrates with Purview for reporting lineage information. What that means is as you execute a pipeline that contains copy activity or data flow activity, ADF automatically publish technical lineage and metadata into Purview. And that includes more than 24 connectors supported for copy activity. So you will be able to see within Purview what is the input data set, what is the output data set, what is the source, what is the destination. You'll be able to see the whole chain of events of the data flowing right through multiple copy activities as well as through multiple data flow activities. The integration also goes the other direction, which means as you have registered a Purview account with ADF, you'll be able to search right there within ADF UI assets that have been registered or scanned through Purview into Purview. The assets that are available in Purview, you can search for them in ADF, and then you can consume them right into ADF by importing them into the data factory as linked services or data sets. And that really gives you a bootstrap experience to start building ETL pipelines using these data sets that are pre-registered in Purview. So that's where we are today. And just to give you a glimpse of where we're headed. So we'll continue to make tons more investment to further enhance the lineage space. And that includes rounding out all 90 plus built-in maintenance-free connectors in ADF. So we have plans to support all of those in Purview, so you get the full fidelity of all the ADF capabilities and lineage information without loss into Purview, and you can stitch them together, as I said, across pipelines, across data factories. So lineage space is one. Also for data flow, today you can only see the lineage for source and sync transforms, and we have plans to further enrich and add more intermediate transform steps. But beyond lineage, we'll have much more exciting roadmap items around giving you more insights, policy, governance. So do be on the lookout for much more exciting announcements to come. And this is just the beginning, right? As Purview matures over time, you'll definitely see ADF integration deepens along with Purview and give you the best, not only the ETL experience, but also the integrated metadata management, lineage, and governance experience alongside with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. The next question that we have is from Kevin, and it's really around error handling, column width, and truncate errors. What do you suggest to solve besides using SSMS or just recreating the table? And this is a Synapse table as sync. The errors in ADF aren't helpful enough. And so with that, we're going to bring in our subject matter expert, Mark, to talk about some of the thoughts around error handling for ADF or
Hey, I'm going to move above the question there so you can see me. I'll touch on the data flow side. I don't know if maybe you want to maybe bring in, I'm not sure who can come on. I don't think Linda can come on, but maybe someone can talk more specifically about copy then. But for the data flow side, we do have what's known as error row handling to handle situations like truncated data column width and those things. Now, today it only works with Azure SQL Database. I see that on the question, this is for Synapse. So we're working on that right now. So we're working on extending error handling for Synapse as well. I gotta change my camera so that I'm above the question. There we go. So we're extending it to Synapse as well. That's not done yet. That's in the works for data flow. Copy activity as well has error handling too for things like this. So maybe someone else on the team wants to jump in and talk more explicitly about that for you. I'll open it up to anybody who wants to jump in. Go for it, yay. You sound like you're muted. This is just me.
So,
there
sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Max. So when you are moving the data in using ADF copy activity, the ADF copy activity also have the building capability to do something like the fault tolerance, including so when you are moving your row from table to another table, you might miss some row have PK violation or schema violation, this kind of stuff. You can either choose to skip that row automatically or fault about the entire copy activity. Right? If you choose to skip that row, And then after you enable the session log in copy activity, you can review each row in your session log, as well as the reason why the row was skipped due to PK violation or other reason. And after that, you can select the row from the log and then recopy the data into your destination to make sure all the data are going to be perfectly moved to your destination. Yeah. Thank you. Back to you, Wishong.
Thank you, Ye. Now, the next question that's coming up, right, is from Mr. BPie123. Is it possible to trigger and monitor automation runbooks or logic app? And given the ADF, one core aspect of ADF, right, is really the control flow, or being able to enable you to orchestrate really complex kind of data jobs. Let's bring on Abhishek, right, who's going to give some of his thoughts on, how does automation runbook, logic app, ADF, how do they all feed? What should we be thinking about? Abhishek, please.
Sure. So ADF has a lot of integration endpoints. Being an orchestration tool, it does let you invoke different endpoints. And so particularly when we talk about logic apps, or some things like webhooks, or when we talk about any service like Azure automation services, now all of them are they expose their REST interfaces, which can be invoked, and you can also track the progress of those automation using REST endpoints. So from ADF perspective, web activity is a very generic control flow activity, which you can use to trigger these endpoints and even monitor these endpoints. And the best part of web activity is on Azure, all the REST APIs that you interact with, most of them do support async await pattern, which basically means that when you invoke a REST API, it's going to respond back with a 202, and then it will also respond back with a tracking URL. And so web activity is capable of actually tracking such endpoints. So when you actually invoke a REST endpoint, which follows 202 pattern, which the Azure APIs does, the web activity will typically look out till the actual execution is complete. And then it'll show you a response. So it makes it feels like a sync API call if your 202 implementation is there on the backend side. And so for Azure automation, logic apps, fortunately, there are implementations which follows 202 pattern, the async await pattern for REST API. And hence, I would say web activity is a very good option to trigger those endpoints. And we also have a webhook activity, which is also very useful in cases where you have custom APIs and you would basically want the a response coming back from the service and invoking ADF pipeline back on, especially if you're designing a service which supports that async the pattern of webhooks, you can use that. So these are the two ways you can invoke these endpoints, which includes Azure automation. Back to you, Hyong.
Thank you, Abhishek. Now let's bring on the next question. Now the question is, can I reuse on-premises SSIS license when using SSIS with ADF? Now let's bring on Sandy to share some of his thoughts.
Hey, thanks, Hyong. Yes, like I mentioned before in the SSIS lightning talk, our primary customer cohort is essentially what we call the brownfield. This is SSIS customer who wants to lift and shift their SSIS workload and SQL Server using the all-pass solution of Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance combined with SSIS and ADF. In doing this, we offer a cost-saving solution where they can bring their own license to apply in the cloud. So we call this Azure Hybrid Benefit options. In this case, we also introduce a new 4-to-1 ratio where you can actually exchange one SQL Server Enterprise Core with 4 SSIS IR in ADF, 4 standard vCores, and vice versa. You can also exchange 4 SQL Server standard cores with 1 Enterprise vCore for SSIS and ADF. This exchange ratio is the same like what you use also in Azure SQL Database and the Managed Instance when you use a GP, General Purpose or Business Critical Edition. Back to you, Hyong.
Thank you, Sandy. Now, the next question from Nathan is, what new features upcoming in ADF can you guys share for ADF pipeline? Anything interesting in development? So with that, I think Shirley and I is going to take the question, and let's bring Shirley online. And before we get into the specific of the question, I think one thing that's really exciting, and we are all as a ADF community, we're super excited about, is ADF continue to grow in new regions, right? So if you look at all the ADF region, including the 5 to 7 that we added just beginning of the year, ADF now operates in about 30 plus Azure region, and we continue expanding. But I think at the same time, one of the things that's top of mind is, with the Azure Synapse going GA in December last year and Azure Purview currently in public preview, I think one thing that we are constantly thinking about is, given that Purview is scanning all your assets and making this available, can we have deeper integration between Azure Synapse, Azure Purview, as well as Azure Data Factory? What can we do there in that space? So that we continue to brainstorm as a team, but coming together, listening to feedback from the community on what else we can do there. And maybe Shirley, you want to add your thoughts?
Sure, thanks, Hyong. So just to add on to that, I think one of the key strengths, and it's a really unique value proposition that ADF offers, is the ability to deeply integrate with all the rest of Azure data services. So, ADF as an integration product, its value, its strength really shines through by ensuring that we have best and the greatest integration, with Synapse as the all-in-one analytics solution workload, with Purview as the cataloging and lineage offering, with all the rest of the storage, the compute, leveraging AKV for credential management, leveraging Azure Monitor for monitoring and management. So all in all, you don't have to look any further than ADF to do ETL and data integration workloads on Azure. So with that, maybe let me briefly touch upon the key investment areas going forward. So ADF, as you know, is a fully managed and serverless data integration service. So for sure, as we see a lot of the enterprise customers, both large and small, continue to bet more and more of their mission critical workloads on Azure, making sure that ADF continues to be the most productive tool, the most usable tool to allow not just ETL and data engineers to build pipelines, but also citizen developers, data scientists, or even business analysts to be able to self-serve and build pipelines in very short amount of time. So, continue to enhance the productivity and ease of use. Using our code-free design paradigm is very much top of mind. Another main theme you will also see is continue to drive the cost perf ratio and making sure that you get the best value for what you're paying for ADF. So around cost reduction and price perf optimization as well. And the third theme you will see is continue our journey on further to enhance the enterprise readiness. So a lot of the enhancement that you heard us talk about on Azure policy integration, on CMK, credential management, authentication, richer authentication, on managed Vnet will for sure continue that journey and making sure that all the enterprise are able to use ADF with with security in mind.
Yeah, and I think to add on to what Shirley has said, ADF, we continue to invest in ADF, and ADF is just going to continue improving, both from making sure that your productivity when you develop your data pipelines continue to be the best experience. And of course, we're not there yet. And we definitely want to work with the community on suggestions on how we can continuously evolve, but also improve the product. But I think at the same time, I think all these sessions, whether it's Product Roundtable and Ask the Expert session, I think all this feedback and all this questions that comes to the team, we are really appreciative and deeply appreciative of the fact, that this is going to help us, think about how we should take ADF from what it is today, right, to what it is tomorrow. And, besides this roundtable, offline, drop us a mail, send us a feedback on our tweet channel as well. And all this is going to help us, Right, so with that, let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Shirley. Now, the next question is, how do we run data flow, or how does data flow run at scale underneath the hood, or rather the secrets, or what is the magic behind data flow? And the best person to talk about the magic behind data flow will be Mark. Let's bring Mark online.
Hey, that's me. The magic behind data flow is Spark. So we execute your data flows, your logic for your data flows, your transformation from a pipeline. And I shouldn't just say from a pipeline, because if you think about it, you're also interacting with the Spark cluster when you are designing and debugging your data flows as well. We have an interactive session set up for you that you can, in real time, look at your data and look at the results of your logic and your transformations. But when you're running in ADF and you're using data flows and you're doing a transformation, that is essentially taking the intent that you wish to do to transform your data and taking that that graph, constructing a graph. You construct the graph. That becomes an intermediate language called the data flow script, and that is shipped down, parceled down to a Databricks cluster in ADF. Now, when you take that logic and you build that in Synapse, remember we talked earlier that pipelines and data flows are pretty much the same thing, available both in Data Factory and in Synapse Analytics. When you're in Synapse, then that is going to run on the Synapse Spark engine. So because we have executors that are running on Spark, we abide by essentially the standard Apache Spark constructs, and so we're able to then take that the script that you write, or essentially the graph that you build, and the resulting script, and then execute that on either of those Spark platforms. So it becomes, your logic becomes interchangeable. Your logic doesn't have to be rewritten if you move to Synapse or anything of that nature, and you don't have to worry about learning Spark or anything about clusters. You really just stand up an Azure Integration Runtime. And then you draw a graph, build a graph that describes what you want to do with your data, your joins, your aggregations, those things. Now, we have a lot of material online, some videos and some helpful guides in terms of tuning those. So once you have your logic built, you're going to want to probably look into some of the options you have for tuning those, changing the number of cores, the size of the Azure Integration Runtime. You'll also probably look at doing some data partitioning and things of that nature. But there's a lot to that. We can't probably cover that here. We have a lot of good material where we walk you through how to do that. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Hi, you were on mute. Can you repeat that one?
Sounds good. I realized that. Thank you, Dion. Yep. Yeah. Apologies for the being on mute. The question from Nathan was, any plans on doing things like Product Roundtable once a month with tips? I think if this is useful to the community, we would like to continue running this on a regular basis, whether it's Product Roundtable, whether it is Ask the Expert. We thought that this will allow us to connect with the ADF community better, but also answer any of your top of mind question. The other thing that we will continue to do as well is through the tech community blogs and more, as well as the Azure Data Factory tweet handle as well. We want to continue sharing with everyone some of the updates that has been in the product, each month. And so watch out for some of these community activities that we're doing. Hopefully this is going to help everyone get up to date and up to speed with what is happening in Azure Data Factory land. And send us a feedback, whether it's the lightning talk format, whether it's this Product Roundtable format where we bring the team together to talk to everyone in the community. Which one works? Which one does not work? Where should we be tuning this? We would love to hear from you, and that is going to help us improve. Thank you, Dion. Let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Nathan, for the question. Now, the question here is really, tell us about improvement made on supporting Delta format. Can you do many of the things that Delta supports, like auto-optimize and more? So let's bring on Mark to share with you some of the latest improvement that we've made so far. And recently.
Hey, I did a mute check there. Thanks for that, Hyong. Yeah, we did. We just released a couple of things for the Delta connector, and this is specific again to for data flows. Maybe Ye or someone might want to jump in terms of what we're doing in the copy connector for data flow, because remember the connectors that you're going to see in Data Factory, just in case you weren't aware, there's going to be some minor differences in the different areas of Data Factory, and that's because, like I was just talking about with data flows run on Spark, whereas copy activity, data movement runs on a different platform, runs on essentially .NET technology. And so there's going to be some differences in those connectors. Now on the Delta side, we just released this week the ability to do auto compact and optimized write. So those are options that you're going to see on the sync for the Delta connector inside of, I keep losing my screen, apologize, I'm looking all over the place for it. You'll see in data flows that was just released this week on the sync. So I don't know if, I'm not sure if the auto optimize or the other options are there yet in the copy data shared data set version of data flow of Delta. If anybody wants to jump in on that, please do so.
Thank you, Mark. Now, as you can see, like we continue doing deeper integration with supporting the Delta format. And of course, over the next few months, you're going to see us continuously improving. And so if you have any top of mind around supporting for Delta format, what else can we do to make the experience even better? Definitely drop us an mail as well. Right, so let's bring on the next question. Now, this is from Syed Islam. What's the limitation of using Synapse ADF integration that we can do in standalone ADF service? I mean major differences between ADF versus ADF within Synapse. Now, that's a really good question. And so with that, I'm going to kick off with some of the thoughts, but I also want to bring in Shirley online so that we could balance and we could discuss about, some of the thinking around this area. Right, so as many of you know, Synapse Analytics went GA in December 2020. Right, and ADF or the data integration experience in Synapse, whether it's with Synapse pipeline and data flow, right, continue to be an important part of Synapse in enabling you to not just ingest data, but also do data transformation, right? And underneath the hood, as you know, right, ADF powers a lot of this data integration experience. And one top of mind is really to make sure that between Synapse pipelines and data flows and ADF pipeline and data flow, there's consistency between the two products. And any innovation that we have in ADF shows up in Synapse, right? And it's bi-directional as well. And so over the next few months, you'll see many of these capabilities, right, showing up consistently between Synapse and ADF. But one other thing that, of course, people have caught out, and as Syed pointed out as well, is that there could be differences. And some of these differences were definitely working really, really hard behind the scene in trying to bridge the gap, right? So we, in Azure Docs, we actually have a document to tell you about the differences between ADF and Synapse pipelines. And hopefully for many of those items that's right now highlighted as differences, we would be able to plug the gap, over the span of this year. And if you have any feedback on, what is top of your mind, what are the kinds of areas that you felt like, hey, why did it show up in one versus the other? We'd love to work with you, because I think driving that consistency between the product is so important to us. I'll hand over to Shirley for her thoughts as well.
Yeah, to continue to add to Wei Xiong's comments, so many of the differences that you see today between Synapse pipeline and data flow versus standalone ADF are not by choice, not by design. They're rather point-in-time differences. So for sure, we will point out these where capability for now apply on one side versus another in our documentation, and we're open for feedback in terms of what do you hope to see gaps to be closed. One notable difference that you might notice is the ability to run SSIS package, rehost or lift and shift SSIS package, and run these in Azure. And that's a capability that standalone ADF offers today, which is not available in Synapse. And that's an area that we'll continue to listen to customer feedback, whether or not this is something used to have as part of Synapse as well.
Yeah, and before we close on this topic, I think the other thing I think is really important is that many of us in the ADF community, right, has been developing ADF pipelines and data flows. And you want to make sure that this kind of skill set that you have built up, right, whether it's tuning the copy activity or tuning the data flow activity, you want to be able to then transition that same set of knowledge and skill set to leveraging Synapse pipelines and data flows. And so for that, I think the team between the ADF team, the Synapse team, we're all one big family. We definitely want to work together to make sure that any knowledge that you have today, any investment that you have in ADF pipelines and data flow, and if you are exploring Synapse Analytics, we provide you with a really smooth path forward. Now, we're not there 100% yet. The feedback from customers as well as community is going to continue to drive a lot of this kind of innovations and also making sure that we are doing the right thing. And so we definitely love to hear from everyone, what can we do better to ensure that you have a smooth experience between both ADF as well as Synapse. So I think with that, let's take on the next question. Thank you, Shirley. Now, the next question is really about performance tuning. And I know that's top of mind in many of the customer conversations that we have as well, is that can you share whether there are any guide or guidance, right, on tuning ADF copy activity and data flow? And I'll assume that, leading on to this is, are there best practices guide and so on and so forth? And we're going to bring in two experts, right, onto the camera to share with you some of the thoughts, some of the performance tuning guides that are available. But at the same time, how should you even think about this whole topic of performance tuning, which is so important to make sure that all these mission critical pipelines are available. Yeah, so to you, Mark, and yeah.
So thanks.
The answer is yes. Over to you, Hyong. Yeah. We do. I'll go real quick, and then hand it off to you. We do have a lot of really good material on tuning. Like Hyong said, it's a really popular topic because the usage of Data Factory has just grown exponentially over the past couple of years, and especially since we've had the no code, low code UI for pipelines and data flows has just completely taken off. And so what that leads to when you have a UI based tool, as I'm sure many of you who use similar tools in the past have known, is that you get into situations where you need to then tune those. And when you're in that kind of a construct of being able to construct something quickly, you go back then and you start tuning that and working on that. And so we've definitely been aware of that and the need to do that. So we've been putting out videos. We've been putting out a lot of docs around, a lot of blogs and things like that. Hopefully you can search them and find them easily. Maybe we can try to put some links besides just the primary docs. There's a perf doc for copy that you can talk about. There's a perf doc for data flows that we continue to grow. And in fact, I know we're all kind of swarming in the PM team around that right now to try to make those better because we realize there's some more things. We had to give you some more ammunition to go out there and make your pipelines scream and be even faster. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, it's over to you.
Sure, thanks, Max. So I can add a few things in terms of using ADF to copy the data in a high-performance way. So slightly different from doing ETL data transformation in Azure. So when you are using copy activity to move your data, normally in most of the cases we hear from customers that you're trying to move data from hybrid scenario, which is you may need to move data from your on-prem data store or from some other system under your firewall, or you have to go through the public internet. So given ADF is fully managed cloud scale data integration services, right? So in most cases, we we found that the performance bottleneck is somehow on the either network or the bandwidth on your on-premise system. So please be aware that the performance can impact going to be impacted by many different factors. So you need to watching the entire end-to-end flow from the beginning to the end, right? Instead of just looking at the integration or data movement power on Azure, giving it's easy to scale up ADF to very powerful or enough CPU memory for you to move your data or do data integration. So yeah, so sometimes it's the best. One of the best guidance for me is always, please continue to find the performance bottleneck, giving especially when ADF have already fully utilized all your data store as well the network bandwidth. Yeah, then you can further increase either the bandwidth from network or the storage part. Yeah, that's it. Back to Wishong.
Thank you. Now, we've come to the end of the round table, and before we, close off, let's also bring Shirley online as well. And I think one thing that we wanted to do is also to express our gratitude to the ADF community. I think Azure Data Factory engineering team all up, right? We value each one of this opportunity to engage with the community, listening to your feedback, answering your question, but most importantly, making sure that everyone is successful using Azure Data Factory. And so you will see here, we leave this slide up as well, that this curated playlist of some of the top viewed videos on Azure Data Factory and Azure SQL continues to be there. And we'll add on to it so that you have a playlist that you could keep at the back pocket. And anytime you run into any issues where you need to self-help, etc., right? Some of these videos is going to help you as well, right? And we also run a very active Azure Data Factory YouTube channel as well, which will always share some of the latest videos on some of these upcoming features. So do tune into it. And so before we close, I just want to hand over to Shirley just to get some of her thoughts before we end off this roundtable. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Shirley?
Thanks, Wishong. Yeah, just to add, very much appreciate this opportunity to have the virtual roundtable. This is a very challenging and trying times. So it's awesome to have a opportunity to connect to all of you wherever you are, whatever time zone and geographic location you are, to be able to connect with you, to build this type of relationship. And for sure, we don't think this as a one-off connection. We do hope to cultivate this relationship and this bi-directional channel, and hope that we will maintain this kind of feedback coming, and then also having this kind of opportunity for us to share with you the latest, greatest, exciting enhancements, as well as sharing our roadmap and thoughts for product enhancements going forward. So again, appreciate very much your time, your participation, your insightful questions, your love for ADF, and we can't wait to see what you build and what great suggestions that you have for us, and looking forward to the continued partnership. With that, we'll welcome Hyong back, and we'll do the final wrap. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Reactor team for partnering with us to host such a successful event. So we look forward to many more such opportunities to connect with the community going forward. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are. And we can't wait to hear from you and see what you build on Azure Data Factory. So on behalf of the entire ADF engineering team, our heartfelt thank you, and goodbye. Take care.